There's a plane sitting in a hangar in Mumbai that cost more than most companies will ever be worth. It doesn't belong to an airline. It doesn't belong to a government. It belongs to one man. Mukesh Ambani, the chairman of Reliance Industries and the richest person in India. And unlike almost every other private jet in the country, this one wasn't just bought off a showroom floor. It was built, piece by piece, into what's being called the most expensive private aircraft ever owned by an Indian businessman. We're talking about a Boeing Business Jet 737 MAX 9. A plane that, once you add up the base aircraft and everything that went into transforming it, comes out to a price tag of roughly $150 million. That's not a rough guess pulled out of thin air. That's the estimate that's been reported consistently since the jet was delivered, and once you understand what actually goes into a plane like this, numbers starts to make a strange kind of sense. Let's start with what this aircraft actually is, because it isn't just a fancy version of a commercial jet. It's a completely different category of flying machine, even though it starts life on the same production line as the planes airlines use to fly 200 people across the country. The Boeing 737 MAX 9 is, in its standard commercial form, built to carry over 200 passengers on regional and cross-country routes. It's a workhorse, the kind of plane you've probably flown on without thinking twice about it. But Boeing also builds a very different version of this same airframe, badged under its Boeing Business Jet line, or BBJ for short. Instead of 200 economy seats crammed in for maximum capacity, the BBJ version strips all of that out and replaces it with open floor space. Space that a buyer like Ambani can then fill however he wants. And what he filled it with makes this the largest aircraft in the entire BBJ MAX family. The cabin floor area on Ambani's jet comes in at around 1,120 square feet, more usable floor space than a lot of upscale apartments. To put that in perspective, most ultra-long-range private jets used by billionaires and executives worldwide, aircraft like the Gulfstream G650 or the Bombardier Global 7500, offer maybe a third of that footprint. Ambani didn't just buy a private jet. He bought something closer to a flying penthouse. The base price for a 737 MAX 9 in this configuration starts at around $118 million straight from Boeing. And that's before a single interior panel goes in. From there, the real transformation begins, and it didn't happen in India. It happened at Euro Airport Basel-Mulhouse-Freiburg in Switzerland, a facility known in aviation circles as one of the premier destinations for high-end private jet completions. This is where raw, empty airframes get turned into the kind of interiors you'd expect to see in a 5-star hotel suite. Except this one happens to cruise at over 30,000 feet. According to reporting on the aircraft, the customization alone is estimated to have added another $30 million or so on top of the base price, bringing the total to that widely cited figure of $150 million. For context, that's not far off from what some countries spend equipping a head-of-state aircraft. Except this one is owned outright by a private individual and his family. So what does $150 million actually buy you inside a plane like this? While Reliance has kept most of the interior details private, and unlike a hotel or a car, there's no showroom you can walk through to see it for yourself. Reporting on the aircraft describes a jet configured less like a commercial airliner and more like a private residence that happens to have wings. Sources describing the layout point to a bedroom suite, dedicated meeting rooms, a formal dining area, and secure communications equipment built into the cabin. The kind of setup that lets the chairman of one of the world's largest conglomerates keep running Reliance Industries in real time, whether he's flying to Mumbai, London, or anywhere in between. Despite that scale, the plane is configured to carry a relatively small number of passengers. Reports put the capacity at around 19 people, a fraction of what the commercial version of the same airframe would carry, and a clear sign of just how much space has been given over to comfort rather than capacity. The exterior tells its own story too. The plane's livery, the paint scheme that covers its outside of the fuselage, was designed in a combination of white, navy blue, and gold, with the Reliance Industries logo prominently placed on the tail fin. It's not subtle, and it isn't meant to be. When this aircraft touches down anywhere in the world, there's no mistaking whose plane it is. There's also a small detail in how the aircraft is registered that says something about how these ultra-high-value jets often move through the world. Before it ever touched down in India, the aircraft was registered under the code T7, tied to San Marino, a tiny European microstate that's become a popular jurisdiction for registering private aircraft, largely because of favorable regulations. It wasn't until September of 2024, when the plane formally arrived in the country, that it was re-registered under an Indian tail number. It's a common pattern among ultra-wealthy jet owners worldwide. Park the aircraft's paperwork in a jurisdiction built for exactly this kind of ownership. Then bring the plane home once it's ready to fly. And when it finally did touch down, the arrival made headlines across Indian media. The jet landed in Delhi in August of 2024, before eventually making its way to Mumbai, where the Ambani family is based, becoming almost instantly the most expensive private aircraft ever owned by an individual in the country. But here's the thing that a lot of coverage of this jet tends to skip past. This isn't Mukesh Ambani's only plane. It isn't even close to his only plane. This $150 million Boeing is simply the newest, largest, and most talked about addition to a private aviation fleet that reportedly includes around 10 aircraft in total, operated under Reliance Commercial Dealers Limited, the entity that manages the family's jets and the pilots who fly them. The fleet reportedly includes a Boeing BBJ-2, previously considered the family's primary long-range aircraft before the MAX 9 arrived, valued at somewhere in the range of 500 to 550 crore rupees, or roughly $60 to $65 million, and outfitted with its own boardroom facilities and private bedrooms for international business travel. There's also an Airbus ACJ319, a business jet from Boeing's main European competitor, which multiple reports describe as being customized specifically for Nita Ambani, Mukesh's wife, featuring hotel-style interiors and a master bedroom of its own. Beyond that, the fleet reportedly rounds out with smaller long-range jets, Falcon 900 series aircraft and Bombardier Global series jets, giving the family flexibility depending on the trip, shorter regional hops, ultra-long-haul international travel, or anything in between. Put together, it's less a personal jet collection and more a small private airline built to serve one family and the sprawling business empire they run. Reliance Industries, a conglomerate with interests spanning oil refining, petrochemicals, telecommunications through geo, and retail, among many others, making it one of the largest and most valuable companies in India, and one of the largest in Asia. And if you want a sense of just how far that aviation reach extends, consider this. When Ambani's son, Anant Ambani, got married, the family reportedly chartered around 100 private jets just to fly guests in for the celebrations. 100 jets. Not owned, chartered temporarily, just to handle the guest list for a single family wedding. It's the kind of detail that puts a $150 million personal aircraft into a slightly different context. For the Ambani family, a jet this size isn't the exception. It's closer to the baseline. So why does a business leader, someone who could, in theory, fly commercial first class or charter a jet for any individual trip, go to the trouble of building an aircraft like this from the ground up? Part of the answer is practical. Running a company the size of Reliance Industries means constant travel, constant meetings, and constant connectivity, and an aircraft configured with private meeting rooms and secure communications solves a real operational problem. How do you keep running a global business when you're airborne for 10 or 12 hours at a stretch? A jet like this isn't just transportation, it's a mobile extension of the boardroom. But part of the answer is the same one that applies to nearly every ultra-expensive private aircraft owned by the world's wealthiest individuals. Whether it's a Gulf head of state, a European luxury tycoon, or an Indian industrialist. It's a statement. It says something about scale, about reach, about the sheer resources available to move seamlessly around the world without ever touching a commercial terminal. When the Reliance-branded, Navy and Gold jet lands anywhere on Earth. It's not just Mukesh Ambani who arrives. It's a visible symbol of one of the largest business empires on the planet, announcing itself the moment the cabin door opens. There's also something worth noting about the timing of all this. The jet's delivery came at a moment when Reliance Industries itself was going through a period of major expansion. Continued growth in its telecom arm through Jio, an aggressive push into retail, and ongoing investments in green energy and petrochemicals. A $150 million aircraft, as extravagant as it sounds, represents a relatively small fraction of a fortune and a company operating at that scale. It's less an isolated indulgence and more one visible piece of a much larger machine that's been expanding on nearly every front at once. It's also worth understanding just how unusual it is for a completion this large to happen outside the countries that normally dominate the ultra-luxury aviation world. Switzerland's Euro airport Basel-Mulhouse-Freiburg has built its reputation completing aircraft for royal families, heads of state, and a small handful of the world's wealthiest individuals. The kind of clientele that doesn't just want a nice cabin, but wants every material, every fixture, and every system engineered to their exact specification. Getting a slot at a completion center like that, for a project of this scale, typically involves years of lead time. Boeing began flight testing the airframe that would become Ambani's jet back in April of 2023, and it wasn't ready for delivery until more than a year later, in September of 2024. A timeline that reflects just how much engineering and craftsmanship goes into converting an empty airframe into a finished, livable cabin. That gap between rolled off the factory floor and ready to fly with a finished interior is where the bulk of the transformation, and the bulk of the additional cost, actually happens. It's also worth putting this jet side by side with what other billionaires around the world are flying, because it helps explain why $150 million, as enormous as it sounds, still doesn't put Ambani at the very top of the list. Bernard Arnault, the French luxury goods magnate behind LVMH, was long associated with a Bombardier Global 7500, a jet with a base price of around $73 million, well under half of what Ambani's aircraft cost. Meanwhile, Gulf royal families and a handful of Middle Eastern billionaires have taken delivery of converted Boeing 747-8 aircraft running past the $400 million mark, once fully customized. Planes with entire dining rooms, formal reception lounges, and crew quarters built into a fuselage roughly 4 times the size of Ambani's 737. In that context, Ambani's jet sits in an interesting middle tier, dramatically more expensive and more customized than what most corporate billionaires fly, but still a fraction of the size and cost of the true flying palaces owned by a small number of oil-rich governments and monarchies. It's the most expensive private aircraft ever owned by an individual in India, without being the most expensive private aircraft in the world. A distinction that matters when you're trying to understand where this jet actually fits in the global hierarchy of ultra-luxury aviation. So what's the final answer to just how expensive Mukesh Ambani's newest private jet really is? By the numbers that have been consistently reported, around $118 million for the base aircraft, another $30 million or so in customization completed in Switzerland, landing on a total of roughly $150 million. Making it not just the most expensive private jet ever owned by an individual in India, but one of the largest and most heavily customized business jets flying anywhere in the world today. It's a plane built less like a vehicle and more like a statement. Proof that when your business empire spans oil, telecom, and retail across one of the largest economies on Earth, even the way you get from one meeting to the next becomes part of the story. Thanks for watching. If you want more inside looks at how the world's wealthiest business leaders actually live and travel, hit subscribe, because there's plenty more of this world left to explore.